out of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit. And the pit was empty. There was no water in it. And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spicery and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt. And Judah said unto his brethren, What profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood? Come, and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen, and they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt. Joseph, as you can see, was a priest. He was placed in his diviner's pit by his brothers. Joseph gets taken to Egypt, and his skill as a diviner is quickly recognized. Joseph is not the poor, defenseless little shepherd boy you have been taught to imagine. He was a powerful and accomplished priest. Later he will become the sacred diviner to Pharaoh himself. Note, some have speculated that the Pharaoh Djoser was in reality Joseph. The real importance of Joseph in Egypt, however, is the marriage which took place there. Here are the verses. Genesis 41:41. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, See, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand, and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, Bow the knee. And he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zephnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphera, priest of On. And Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. This is what we call a milestone in the history of the Hebrews. Past this point, my friends, there is no turning back. While Abram is the father of the two sister peoples of Israel and Ishmael, Joseph is the gatherer of the scattered tribes in Egypt, where they will soon become one people, the Hebrews. It is Joseph's marriage that sets the stage for all that is to come. Why is this marriage so important? Let's find out together right now. Joseph is married to a priest's daughter. Her name is Asenath. Now ask yourself this. Would Pharaoh give Joseph just any old priest's daughter to wed? Try this one on for size. The woman, Asenath, was the high priestess of the temple of On. She was one of the most powerful women in Egypt. So, who is this On character they're making such a fuss over? On is the Hebrew word for one. There are a couple of gods and goddesses that have been called the One. The one we are concerned with, however, is by far the most significant. She was the Doma female in charge of the Hebrew sub-project. Her name is Isis, the One. Note, please don't confuse this with the God One we have discussed earlier. They are not the same. The goddess Isis, the Queen of Heaven, the star, Stella Maris, the One, she had many symbols associated with her worship. The star, the crescent moon, and in particular, the fish of Isis, or in Hebrew, Nun, N-U-N. Her sacred number was 13. She and her twin sister, Hathor, were the two of the most powerful goddesses in ancient history. She was called the Eye of Ra in her destroyer role. Now here's a little something you probably don't realize. take out a U.S. $1 bill. There's good old George Washington himself. Now turn it over and look on the back. You will see the Great Seal of the United States. Above the Egyptian pyramid is the Eye of Ra. This is the symbol for Isis, Hathor. Just a coincidence? Look over the eagle's head. There are 13 stars and the inscription E, pluribus unum. It means out of many, one. Annuit septis means the divine one has smiled on our undertaking. All this Isis symbols on the American $1 bill, and what does it have to do with Joseph? Nothing. I just wanted to give you a glimpse of way down the road a ways, you might say. America will be the topic of a very important way message in the not too distant future. So, these are all symbols of the goddess. The fish, or Nun, N-U-N, is particularly interesting. It ties in directly with Joseph, and as you will see later, with Jesus as well. Joseph was a priest of the goddess. These priests would carry a jar with a fish inside. The fish symbol was associated with both them and the goddess. Today, we call the symbol Pisces, but back then, it was simply fish of Isis. Store this fact deep in your mind for future retrieval. Now, Joseph, who was already a priest of the goddess, marries a high priestess of Isis. He then begins to gather in the various scattered tribes. What was the reason for this gathering? The main purpose was to build a united people from the various peoples, but it was also to bring them under the control of the Doma's most powerful instrument on earth, the priestess of Isis. But how did the Doma accomplish the task of bringing these people into Egypt? Genesis 54. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according as Joseph had said. And the dearth was in all lands, but in all of the land of Egypt there was bread. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh was unto all the Egyptians, Go. And Pharaoh said unto all the Egyptians, Go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses, and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt, And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because the famine was so sore in all lands. I don't believe this needs any further explanation. Genesis 46. And Israel took his journey with all that he had, and came to Beersheba, and offered sacrifices unto the God of his father Isaac. And God spake unto Israel in the visions of the night, and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, Here am I. And he said, I am God, the God of thy fathers. Fear not to go down into Egypt, for I will there make of thee a great nation. And that's exactly what the Doma did. Before we leave Joseph, there is one more set of verses we should look at very carefully. Genesis 46 and 31. And Joseph said unto his brethren and unto his father's house, I will go up and show Pharaoh, and say unto him, My brethren and my father